Hello, everybody, and welcome to our monthly webinar. Today is special because this webinar is about patients, which is our main objective in clinical trials. Is probably one of the more important how can I say this, subjects or issues in the clinical trials environment. And we have today two very special guests. Our first guest is Christine von Graysville. She is a CEO. She is a patient. She specialized in patient advocacy. She's also a storyteller, a speaker, patient perspective, and the best of everything is that she has been named as one of the top 100 women on influence by Silicon Valley Business Journal. Welcome, Christine. It's a pleasure to have you here and listen to all the education and all the your experience in this webinar.
Well, thank you for having me. And it always sounds so weird when other people say it, right? To me, it was just kind of this little award. And then everybody else is like, wow. But yes, I'm Christine von Graysville. I run a small nonprofit. We're working or trying to put our business plan together on really how to break down some of the silos that we have in healthcare. And I think it's very important to have that patient perspective in everything that we do, especially when we're going into clinical trials and especially with this new digital age and data that we're all experiencing. So I'm happy to be here, and I guess I'll let you introduce the other guest.
Yes, our other guest is Rainier Tula Medeiros. Did I pronounce it well, Rainier?
Yes, you did.
Okay. He's also a CEO and owner of eClean Pro. This is a platform or a software that allowed people to, or clinics to create and develop the clinical trials more efficiently. It has the e-source, the e-docs, the text, the budget included, marketing, but this platform have a very special feature that I really like, and Rainier is here to tell us all about it, and is going to educate also us about the potential benefits that this can have for our clinics. And obviously this is going to be reflected in a better a clinic process, and obviously on a patient, on the patient's visits and getting better data. So let's start. Welcome welcome, Rainier. It's a pleasure to have you here. And let's start with Christine.
Sure, why not? So where do you want to start, Monica?
Well, I think everybody would love to hear about your story, how you came to the place where you are right now.
Sure. So I like to tell people my life up to now has been a series of unfortunate events. But out of those unfortunate events, right, there have been solutions and things that I've been able to implement and things that I've been able to find out that have helped improve my own quality of life and my own care. And so, you know, I've experienced everything from lost medical records to damage from medications. And now I'm really exploring the genome, really, and how we can work with the genome and how we can really look at patients and find the underlying conditions rather than treating for symptoms or for a diagnosis or even misdiagnoses. You know, and as we're looking at trials, I think there are so many ways that we can work trials that we can really, I guess, maximize our patient communities and actually involve them in the process so that they are really involved, right? I think a lot of times when we run clinical trials, we're not looking at the people that are in the trials. We're looking at numbers and de-identified data and really looking to kind of protect ourselves. And so what we really need to do, and what I tell companies all the time, is really getting into those communities and working with those communities, finding out what people's needs are when we're starting, even just the thought of even starting a clinical trial, right? I think there needs to be a patient involved, and not just any patient, but a patient who's educated around the system, who can help us work through some of the kinks that we may experience. And so now it's a lot of public speaking. Estella and I were actually just at a clinical trials supply conference last week in San Francisco, and really just spoke to the side on the community, right? And really trying to connect people with the communities that you're trying to help. I think a lot of us, especially in clinical research, lose sight of what we're doing this for. And so I think it's important to integrate the patient stories and the experiences, and really find out how these trials are impacting people in their daily lives. And so I guess I'll stop there.
Wow, I absolutely love what you just say, because that is actually what it should be called, patient centricity, right?
Mhm.
That everything really evolves around the patients, and not just numbers or data, as you just mentioned.
Well, I like to tell
S-
industry too as well, that we would not all have jobs if there weren't sick patients. And I think that's one of the things patients have to understand as well. So
That's right. That's right. Obviously, yeah. But at the end of the day, everything is for the patients. Everything is to improve the humanity quality of life, right? So we're working towards that, and I think that's the most fulfilling part of being part of this industry.
yeah, there is hope, right? And I think I look at clinical trials, clinical researchers as that.
My staff and I are committed to enhancing your.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that, Christine. Can you
It's
please
okay.
continue?
No, go ahead.
So I actually had a question. So what you said about first just love saying love hearing you say that putting a space for the patients, right? Because working from the from a CRO perspective, that is very much the case. You're dealing with reports, numbers, and it's very, you tend to detach from the actual human interaction, especially if you're not at the actual site. So I can kind of see how though it's kind of more of an equilibrium in regards to putting a space for the patient, but also a space for like directly in the site in regards to recruitment, right? And how you're going about connecting with patients and how you are utilizing the community. And so to be more direct, my question would be, for your organization, are there particular pathways that you guys are going about and being able to connect more frequently with patients, especially in a more diverse demographic?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that makes being in the patient advocacy space interesting is, we don't have to follow all the HIPAA laws and things when we talk to each other, right? We can share our stories openly, and we don't have to worry about, what was said or any of those things. So you get a more open, right, a description of what people are going through. When I was I was in the Middle East for a conference, and one of the people there was talking about how they sent in a clinical researcher to talk to patients after they had the experience, and got very limited responses. But when they actually sent in another patient to talk to that person, they had pages of information, right? And I think a patient's going to respond to somebody who's been through what they've been through. And a lot of times we like to send out people to talk about things, but who don't really understand at the level where that person is and how to explain things. And so I think one of the things, we have to think about is how people interact with each other, how they interact within their own race. I'm not Latina, but I am Filipino, and there are a lot of similarities between us there. And I see that, right? I see the culture influencing my treatments and decisions that were made for me. So really, one of the other things I think we need to talk about is reframing the idea of clinical trials. We look at clinical trials as a last ditch option for a lot of people, when that's not what it should be. We should be finding people when they are first diagnosed with a condition, before they hit comorbidities and exclusions with drugs and other things, and really talk to them about the possibility of what a clinical trial can do, and make the people who are participating in those trials the heroes that they really are.
100%. Thank you. Sorry, one more question, Monica. Sorry, I don't know if you guys are going to jump in. It's just I really
No.
love this topic. I was from public health, and then prior to that, about 8 years in clinical industry, and so I saw a lot of advocacy and how that actually can really make a difference. And so um, I'm curious though, given how I feel like we're kind of in that range where you have the older generation with the newer generation and technology, feel like it's probably double the work, right? Because you're finding one in one location in one sphere and the other one, more personal one-on-one. So how exactly are you guys kind of finding that intermediate space, or is there one?
I think right now there isn't one, but I think we're working towards that. Estella, who's on the call, we've talked about, building programs to maybe help with nonprofits, right? I always see an issue where, we count on nonprofits to do all of these things for us, and yet we're still not getting results in clinical trials, right? And so I think if we're working with nonprofits, those are the people that are supposed to have that connection with communities. So is there a better way to do that, right? And how do you pick even some of the groups to work with? Because I know I've worked with a lot of companies who look at numbers, right? They look at how many followers these people have. They look at the income and the budget that this nonprofit has, and they're not reaching out to the grassroots organizations who are on the ground, who are in those communities and doing things, and I think there needs to be a space for patients where there's not a stigma around what we're going through, but that's really looked at as life experience, and how can you use that life experience in certain patients to help, elevate the cause of clinical trials.
100%. I know that I can't remember who it was that I spoke with. This is just like a random conversation that we had, but they discussed, they're like, well, in order for us to feel that we can bring somebody on board, like you said, we need to know that they have a good following. And I remember just looking at him and saying, most people that do that grassroots work, as you said, they don't have time to be posting. They don't have time to be like, advocacy is not, being online and making all sorts of, content. It's about going door to door and getting to know the individuals and their families and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I resonate completely with what you just said. Thank you for mentioning that.
And we can pay for followers at this point too, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Looking at somebody's followers does not necessarily mean they have an impact in the community.
100%. 100%. Sorry, guys. Go ahead. It kind of took over all the questions.
No, so I was thinking about, I was looking throughout your LinkedIn, and I noticed that your career has been always like in service of the community. So how in which point did you decide that you wanted to be working with patients advocacy, or what took you to that place?
My own experience and really not having support myself. I talk to people a lot, and we talk a lot about support and support groups and how we offer that support to communities. But I also think at a certain point, communities and that support can sometimes hinder yourself. I know a lot of people who have a great support system, so they're not going to look further for anything, right? They've got a good quality of life. Why mess with anything, right? And so for me, it was that lack of support that kind of drove me further and connected me more to the people that I was seeing that weren't getting that support, and really just resonating with them. I'm on Social Security disability myself. I've been out on disability since I was 28 years old. And so that also played a part of it, right? Not being able, living in the US and not being able to take payment for fear of losing Medicare is a huge factor for those of us that live on disability. And so really my life became service, not only because I wanted it to and because I like it, but it was kind of forced on me, and I honestly, I talk about it all the time, that if I knew how far and how deep some of these issues went, I wouldn't want to have gotten involved. But then I think, who else would, and I see Estella here doing just the same thing. She's a patient as well. And like I said, we've spoken a few times. I'm trying to bring her more into the speaking roles, and really, she has a great connection with the community. And the one thing that I love about her group and what they do is they hold these support group meetings that have licensed therapists at the meetings, right? And they're looking at the community, they're finding resources, they do things through artwork and really exploring other ways, to work with them. And I think it's so important to involve those patients in what they're doing and bring it into this whole clinical trial process, right? It's a hard thing to go through, and to have that support and to have organizations who are truly looking out for patients is extremely important as well.
I really love that point that you just mentioned, because especially those support groups or these meetup groups, is real people. It's just the people that is experiencing the same situations, even the caregivers or the people that created that group. In reality, is people that is usually experiencing somehow the need to have that, obviously. Sometimes those groups are overlooked, because obviously they don't have much advertisement, or yeah, who knows, just hidden, right? I when I was doing patient recruitment, in some point I concentrate my efforts in these groups, because I knew the opportunities that you had to chat with people with a specific condition, and I learned a lot. And obviously it's a big impact that have in society too, because otherwise some of these groups or some of these people with these conditions don't have any other possibility to have any other support. And who's best to give you support than people that is experiencing the same thing as you?
And I think one of the things that you said there, talking to patients is truly important, right? Social listening, which I know a lot of companies are doing right now, and kind of just tuning in to hashtags and groups and listening in, that is not the same as interacting with the community. And we have to remember that. And also, some of the social listening tactics that people have, right? It doesn't resonate well. It doesn't mix well with certain communities. So you've really got to get out there and find out what these communities need, right? We all have a need here. And I think the patient needs tend to get forgotten when we have these discussions of what everybody needs.
Yeah, and that brings also another topic, which is patient diversity. The communities, specific communities, not just with the condition, but let's say with heritage background, like Latinos or like yourself, like communities that have more tendency to develop specific conditions that oftentimes are forgotten because older communities are participating more. So I think that's another point that we need to have in mind when reaching out to the communities, the background, the condition, and like you say, going to the grassroots is just the best way to go.
Yeah, I think so.
Christine, does your organization actually have, aside from, directly helping patients, do you have, I guess you could say, like a list or some sort of contact form that if other individuals, especially within the research industry, when they hear this video, I'm sure they'll be just as moved as we are, so is there any way or that they can connect you, or do you know another organization that helps them
No,
within that
and
direction?
so one of the things that I like to do, so my organization, I'm really trying to connect people. And so anyone that wants to reach out, if I can't help you, I have groups that I work with, that I, different patient communities, different resources that I can always get in contact with. I think it's extremely important to really, I don't know, it's not really wealth, but share that information among different communities. And for me, I've built up a pretty good book of contacts, not just here in the US, but globally. And really anyone that reaches out, I'm happy to try and help connect them with the right patient groups and really try to move this forward as we go into these uncharted waters, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there particular steps as to how you would even get into advocacy? Is it literally like a position, a job, or is it more of a volunteering aspect where you kind of fall into
We're,
it. Yeah.
we're all still trying to figure that out ourselves too. I think it's interesting that you asked that, right? Because there's so many different levels of patient advocacy. And I don't think that as an industry, we really think about that. You do have patients who are more educated, who have been in the system, who have researched, who have taken class, whatever, right? But you also have those other patients who are newly diagnosed. And in our own patient community, we struggle with that, right? On where to draw the line and what kind of patients can be used for certain things, because we also don't want to put somebody into a place where they're not comfortable yet, or where they could actually hurt their community instead of helping them. So I'm very careful about who I connect people with, making sure that they are people that have the connections or the resources or can offer what people are looking for. And, getting to know different patients. I have multiple diagnoses myself. I think I'm now at 32 different diagnoses and still undiagnosed. But having all of those conditions, right, hasn't pigeonholed me into one spot. And so that's allowed me to connect with different patient communities and industry and biotech and everybody else that's out there, right? And really trying to find who they can match with best. But getting into advocacy, it's a strange game. We've got people that do it for notoriety, that just want to travel, that want, whatever it is that they see us living our lives doing, and don't really realize what goes into this. It's not just about sharing your story. It's about talking about solutions, finding ways to connect communities. And I think a lot of advocacy goes to a personal level. And that's really what you're taught, right? When you get into advocacy, it's how to tell your sob story, and really not taught how to interact or how to engage, or even, how to share your responses. I'm in meetings all the time where I speak up and then other patients start speaking up. But until I do, or until Estella or someone else in the room says something, most people are just happy to be there. And I'm looking for voices and people that really want to make an impact and change, and looking at these things differently than we've looked at them before.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. All your responses are just very hard hitting. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I asked that question because, like I said, I was in healthcare for so long, and I never saw actual titles, right? It was always, in this case, I was from, a rural area right near the border. So it was usually a nurse that spoke a lot of Spanish that was really, close to the patients, right?
Yeah.
And then going from that into public health, that's when I actually started to see the title advocacy, patient advocacy, where they would travel a lot, right? So I just thought it was interesting because, I personally, in research so far, I haven't actually seen that title yet. I mean, I could probably just be not aware, but because of that, I just find it interesting because, public health, clinical industry and clinical research, they're almost within this, pretty much in the same sphere. And there's so many things that are just not intertwined, and so, and it all really just kind of revolves together in its own, its own ways. So I just thought that was interesting, but thank you for sharing that.
Oh, no. And I think we also have to look at, patients have lived experience, right? You may run a trial, you may know this trial, you may know what the side effects of these drugs are and everything else, right? But to actually experience those is completely different than just talking about it, right? Really quick, I'm going to tell you a short story. My doctor, when I was a kid, because you mentioned, growing up in that area and who to turn to, I had a physician, and when I was 14, I was diagnosed with a rare blood disorder. And my doctor, I hated her at the time, but she was a lifesaver. But she used to make me volunteer in the hospital as a kid. And when she would have patients who developed TTP, the blood disorder that I had, she would call me in and make me sit on the edge of this person's bed and talk to them. And at the time I thought, what is she doing? No one else has to do this. And I thought it was the most horrible thing, right? But as I got older, really, it was that idea that I could relate to someone, and she saw that as my physician and was able to bring me in there. And so I think it's really important to have that connection of somebody who has actually experienced something when you're talking about that to other people. I think patients should be used, as in clinical trials as people who are consulted with other patients, right? There should be a patient at every hospital or every clinical site that if you're going to run a trial, here's a patient that you can talk to that can answer more of your questions, right? Not the technical side of it, but the real life questions of what you want to hear about, because it is so different coming from somebody who sees what happens versus somebody who's actually lived through. And I think we have to take those insights and learn from them and implement things that patients say early on in the system to avoid some of these problems later.
Oh, that story gave me goosebumps.
Now that you
Gave me
mentioned that, Christine, since I've been working in research, I have come across with 2 studies that did exactly that. They brought patients with a condition, and obviously the older patients got connected, but even the whole team got connected too, because now you're understanding and you're hearing from a real person that is experiencing. You're learning from them how to treat them, how to talk to them, how to behave, how to work with them, because that also helps the sites or the clinical team to have a more insightful idea of what these patients are going through, and that makes it even more meaningful. Up to this day, those 2 studies have been the best studies I have ever been part of, because they put their heart on it. So it didn't show us just a company trying to make millions of dollars with a drug, but they were caring about the patients. And that happened in the in the COVID period, in the pandemic, when the pandemic started. And even that we were not seeing each other all the time with the patients and with the study teams, that brought us all together, and we work. I work harder than for any other study, and it was for that reason, because it's sensitive. How you pronounce that word? Sensitivize. Yeah, everybody. Yeah. It make everybody more it make everybody more sensitive about the condition and more knowledgeable. And it was beautiful to hear people sharing their stories about the condition, about their experience, about their symptoms, and learning like from a real person, not just doctors, not just nurses. No, I mean,
the whole picture.
It's more touchy.
Yeah. And that gave me goosebumps that you said there were actually 2 studies, because I do think that is so important, right? You can get so much information off of one person, but when you even combine 2 patients together, you'll get 100 times more information, because they feel comfortable. They know that somebody's experienced that. And so it's not a bunch of suits in a room, right? It's somebody that you relate to. And I think you're right. It does make the entire team feel a little more connected too.
And I think those 2 studies probably were more successful than any other study when achieving the numbers. Yeah. In fact, one of those studies finished earlier than the goal that they had, the deadline that they had to finish accruing patients for that study. So I can tell that from my experience that absolutely works in research.
I love hearing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Christine, why people with empathy? Where this idea came from? Since when is this born? Your company?
So we started 2 years ago, and the story is actually kind of interesting. I grew up in the Silicon Valley. I was born and raised here. And I was going to networking events all the time, right? Really just trying to find people in healthcare in the area to connect with. And I was getting a lot of very smart individuals with very low emotional intelligence. And so there was a ranting session with my old co-founder where we sat and talked, and really it was just a moment of weakness where I said, I just wish this world had more people with empathy. And it was like, oh my God, that's our name. And so, we started 2 years ago. I went into heart failure, unfortunately, the second year or the first year of our nonprofit, and things got put on hold. So right now we're in the process of rebuilding and really just trying to find out where we can build these programs. And if it is to help in the clinical side, or if it's really to work on the nonprofit side, or just connecting the right people. I think it's hugely important to have that patient perspective, and whether I give it to someone or someone else, we need to just make sure that that's there. And so the nonprofit is now trying to elevate those voices of patients and really explaining to people, we want people to eventually know the value of their collective data, of knowing that, as we walk into clinical trials, that this isn't just you. This is an entire population of people who are involved in this and counting on this, right? And I think we look at trials and things and such like this with our health as more of an individual thing, but we will never come to answers if we're looking at just an individual. And so really just emphasizing the fact that collective data is important, right? It's valuable. It's something that can fuel your community as well, right? And find the right people with that data that you need to work with your conditions. And so we're working on it. I've got another meeting tomorrow to finalize some things. But yeah, just really looking on how, right, to make sure that patients are included in this process, and to make sure that they know just that value. I grew up thinking that I was a burden on everybody, including my family, and still, right, struggle with that. I wrote a post one time about imposter syndrome. I sit in these rooms and I have these conversations with amazing people with 500 letters behind their last names. And I don't have that, right? But I do have lived experience. And I can also tell you, in healthcare, clinical trials may be your job, or virtual, or whatever little silo of this you are in, every single part of that affects my life. And so it gives a bigger picture, right, of how this works, and not just the trial, but following the trial, right? What happens after the trial? What happens after all of this? We just need more guidance. And so hoping to build a roadmap, right, to help people find those options easier, and help our communities as well.
I love how your company
Yeah.
has so much heart in it, so much soul, and all this. That is so genuine. That's what I wanted to say. Is your companies are really genuine soul.
Yes.
I really like it.
It's not for money for me, right? It's really, for me, it's about making sure that my nieces, my friends' kids, that no one else has to experience the things that I've been through. And if there is some little bit of hope in what I've gone through, that we can then pivot and turn into something and really help others, that's what I want to do.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad we got all this on recording, because
Yeah,
your answers have
we're
been great,
very
honestly.
happy. Yeah, we're very
Exactly.
happy to amplify your voice through
Thank
our
A big shout
organization.
out to Christine, our chief executive officer. She's amazing for having, connected us to you, Christine. Thank you so much. I believe she's in here right now. She's on mute, but thank you so much for making this connection. Your words, your experience is, there's just no price on that. It's honestly, you moved us today. I got goosebumps. I don't think I've had that in such a long time when it comes to interviews. So it's pretty major. Thank you so much for sharing everything. And I honestly hate to wrap it up, but we do have like an hour marker, and we definitely need to make sure
We
that
need
we're
our other guest.
yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but
Yeah,
definitely
but
we do not want to not re-collaborate. We would definitely need to find a way that we can work together. And again, thank you so much.
Oh, no
yeah,
problem.
Krista. Yeah, I think I would love to bring you back, and also bring Perla Nunez, and probably one of the pharmaceutical that I mentioned, if they are open to speak about that, because I think it will be a very interesting discussion.
Oh, yeah, I would love to. You guys just let me know. And I saw Christine in the comments.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you very,
No
very
problem.
much for all you're doing, for your time today, and most especially for sharing your story, and for being the voice of those that don't have a voice,
Mhm.
or those that the voice is silent.
Yeah,
So
well, I am happy to connect with you all. And again, I put my LinkedIn there in the chat if anyone wants to reach out. And I'm happy to just talk and explore solutions with you all. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
thank you. All right, so now we go with Rainier.
Hello, hello.
Oh, hi, Rainier.
Well, thank you, Monica, for
Okay.
inviting me.
Yeah, no, thank you for being here. So Rainier is a Cuban
Yes, senor.
person. So tell
Right.
us about eClean Pro and your new feature that we were discussing this morning. I think is a wonderful tool. It will help clinics, and especially having that personal contact with the patients.
Yes. So just a few years ago, I was like another software developer. It is when my partner, which is a foreign doctor, came up with the idea of creating the CTMS. There are a lot of another providers out there, but we wanted to be more involved with the clinical, with the actual locations, with the person, to actually make it, a profitable solution, like they can afford, like affordable solution for them. So, because little by little, I've been learning about clinical trials, and sadly, with the pandemic, remarked the importance of the trials and to be ahead of the disease. And so, I mean, right now I'm feeling like super proud, like to be part of this community and to support and to help improve clinical trials to have, the cure to disease sooner. So we developed this CTMS solution with a lot of functionalities to help clinical trials. And as Monica mentioned, one of the features is related with the recruitment process, which we know is like a bottleneck, really difficult communicate and to find the right candidate for the trials. So we basically create this tool to integrate our customers' website with the eClean Pro platform to make really easy this recruitment process, in which also they have the opportunity to chat with the person applying to the studies, and they will have like more organized information of all the applicants and all the conditions. They can put reports, etc., to make this pre-screen process really way easier, right? And so that's kind of the web integration part, but we have a lot of features and to offer to improve clinical trials, of course. So I don't know if you want me to talk about another features, Monica.
I would like to ask specifically about that feature, that the clinic is able to speak in real life and connect with the patient that is participating, how that happens.
So basically they can set up campaigns linked to the enrolling studies in the eClean Pro platform in their accounts, and those campaigns get published in their website. So in a way that they can use that integration as a landing page for their recruitment processes. So the patient land in their website in which they show all the information and details of the study, and the person apply. When that happens, the information goes automatically to their account and show them alerts of the new recruitment processes. And from that moment, they have the ability to chat with the person and to agree with them and to communicate and to answer any question they might have. So that's basically how it works.
So the clinics will have the opportunity to initially add, let's say, some inclusion and exclusion questions to filter, and then from that they can keep on going the communication, or even since the very beginning when the patient registered, they can start talking.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. And I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Thank you for bringing that. So, but when the clinic set up the campaigns in their account, they have the opportunity to configure multiple questions, basically to identify and include those inclusion exclusion criteria. Also, the person applying have the opportunity to specify their conditions. So that way the application contains more content to be able to identify based on the conditions and the answers that they provide to those inclusion exclusion questions that every clinic can set up dynamic. Based on that, they can identify pretty easy if the person actually is a right candidate or not.
Okay, and just to let everybody know that to keep in mind that this is not a platform to do advertisement only. It's just one of the features of your platform that or your software that is basically for e-source, regulatory, budget, and then also includes this marketing tool. What else does your platform has?
So I guess it's pretty much like everything, like from the basis, like the patient database with all the medical conditions and the ability to do inclusion exclusion criteria and to pull up from the database the possible candidates. So you have the calendar, appointment reminders. You have the option to set up the source electronically with everything that have to go with that part. The electronic document signatures, submissions to PI for review and sign, and the budget part, they have the option to configure the budget and put reports and to have control of all the sites and all the studies in single pages. So it's, technology is pretty much focused on organization, having everything in one place. So like improving, automating processes, that's pretty much what is technology about, right? So joining that with clinical trials, it's to improve everything, like from the pre-screening process to the recruitment, follow up with the person via chat, SMS or email, the automation processes to follow up and agree with the baseline visits, all the setups like virtual monitoring visits. Monitor can, create queries. The person from the site can pull up reports from open queries. They can respond. There are a lot of features that they can use and take advantage of to improve clinical trials results.
I actually would like to mention something that I saw in this software, and it's that it says Spanish. So is that it can be translated? What is that part of the software for?
Actually, yes. We have also a client in Bulgaria. So we have the ability to do translations. So currently we have English, Bulgarian, and also Spanish, working on the Spanish part. Sadly, wow. I'm from Cuba and I'm working in the Spanish. Hopefully it's gonna be done. It's gonna be done
for
soon.
For South America, and for
yes.
Actually 28 countries in the world speak Spanish. So for
Yeah.
those countries.
That's great. I don't think I've ever heard of that before. Honestly, that's
No.
amazing. Finally.
Yeah, actually, we kind of have a plan. So we were working on this project like 3 years ago, and we wanted to launch when we feel like comfortable. So we, first wanted to actually see what we can offer, how we can compare with the other providers to actually have, a good product to offer and an affordable product to offer. So, and we also, let's say, participate in a site solution summit last October to be, close to sponsors and the main providers. And actually, we had a good feedback from them, so we feel more comfortable, and we actually launched the product like this year, and we had, so far a few customers. So we have a lot of work to do.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Rainier, now tell us a little bit more about the story of your company. So you mentioned that your business partner is a foreign doctor. So
Yep.
that means he has experience in research. Was he a PI or was he involved in research in some point? Or is he or when he came to United States, he got involved in research?
Yeah, that's correct. So like 7 years ago, he came to the US, and right away he jumped into the clinical trials. But that time, I guess for him was like the easier way to get more involved with patients and that kind of thing, which is actually what he likes to do for every day, and to help patients and to improve quality life. So, and little by little, he was, getting more and more involved, and that's how he came out with this idea, because he also faced a few providers, was in certain processes that he identified that could be improved, and and also super expensive. So that's why we came up with this idea to actually help in certain way, right? So like creating this tool easy to use for every clinical trial. So because before it was like pretty much impossible for small sites. And little by little, from the beginning, we kind of wanted to launch just with a simple CTMS, and we had like really tight really good communication with our customers. And one of the approach that we have, we've been trying to push forward, is to hear from their feedbacks and to try to improve every process, because small things actually convert the software in a way better solution. Like some of the features that I show you, Monica, for the speech recording, because we know technology, this kind of software is mostly used with tablets and that kind of devices. So to write down the big progress notes, and it's really tedious. So one of the customers came up with the idea, hey, why you don't use the Google voice recording? So we implemented that also in multiple languages. Bulgarian, super difficult, but we get it done. So really happy to have that feature. And yeah, little by little, we improve the software, by hearing the feedbacks. I mean, I can point out a lot of features that we have done. And actually, it's not my idea. It's actually my customer's idea, because they are the one who knows more what part can be improved. And they didn't have that before, this kind of relationship with the provider. So that's one of the goals that we want to maintain, and to keep kind of to improve more and more the software, and to have a better solution to actually help clinical trials.
So he's the doctor, and then you're the software guy.
Yep, I'm the software guy, the IT, and he's more like the business part, like everything related with these clinical trials. I need to to check with Jose.
Well, that's so awesome. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. I think it's exceptional that you guys are doing the language aspect of it. I think that that's one of the more major roadblocks on a whole, like worldwide. And congrats that you guys are already moving towards that. That's amazing. And I think it's even more amazing that you're taking the time to actually hear out what the PIs have to say, listening to the sites. I know when I was at a hybrid site, working directly at a hybrid site in a rural area, part of the concern for the physician to fully transition over to complete research as opposed to just hybrid, and also going from, you know, paper to electronic, was because they were worried that the system wasn't going to either tailor to their particular like way of going and processing things, or that they would end up getting with a system that wouldn't hear their concerns and help try to adjust or make sort of, you know, some assessments into how they can better, you know, maneuver for the site. So that's really amazing that you guys are doing this. I can see that being a huge benefit for not just all sites, but more specifically for sites that are in rural areas, you know, that need language interpretation, that also need, you know, the whole aspect of being it more feasible, you know, more affordable, and again, hearing them out, right? Because, you know, grassroots, you know, the sites, even though sites, you know, do well at pretty much at some point, they are the little guy in the big scheme of things, right? And so it's super important that we always keep them in mind. And thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
you.
thank you. One thing that I learned today from our two guests is the importance of listening to the community
Yeah,
in the different areas, in the professional community, the patients, the community as a whole is just so important, because that's how we learn, and that's how we improve and help each other.
100%. Couldn't
Right.
agree more, Monica. Well,
Yeah.
thank you both for coming here today. We really appreciate it. Rainer, we've had you on before. Thank you so much for coming on again and sharing this new information with us. As always, we're happy to continuously have you involved with LICR. And you too, Christine, thank you so much for being here today. Your story was very moving. As Monica said, we definitely want to continue to collaborate and probably bring you on with a few other guests to speak again on patient advocacy. So thank you both for providing your insights, and we hope to continue to provide more information to our LICR members. And if you guys have any requests or topics you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to let us know. You can always reach out to any of the co-founders on LinkedIn, or even feel free to drop in a topic here. But thank you, everybody. Monica, Dan, I don't know if y'all have anything you want to say before we.
Yeah. And also suggest us on any specific guest, because we obviously know people, but not everybody, and maybe there is somebody out there that is worth having it as a guest. And obviously, thank you everybody for being here. And if anybody has any questions for our guests, this is the perfect timing.
Yeah.
Any questions or any comments?
Thank you, everybody.
So
We will send the follow-up email with the Eileen Schneider, the writer's article on this meetup in a few weeks.
Absolutely.
Share it with your friends, please. Thank you.
And if you're looking for other topics, I'd love for you guys to discuss genomics and how that's going to play into clinical trials as we move forward.
Yes.
So I am, I think there's a lot of misdiagnoses out there, and we really need to look at people at a cellular level. And so I think genomics is going to play a huge part in clinical trials, and how patients start to organize themselves around defects in their genome is starting to and going to happen. And so those are things that I think we also need to talk about as we move forward.
I agree.
That
Actually,
is
love that
actually
topic.
an amazing topic. Yes, I think we all love that topic in the Latinos in clinical research team.
Yeah.
It's something like seriously amazing. My physician actually is finally transitioning to a more larger approach, and so she's implementing that with her patients. So I'm actually going to do my genome testing in 2 weeks. So I thought it was pretty cool. I'm like, yes, sign me up. Let's go see. I'm a little nervous, but it's good to know, whatever.
Well,
But
part
yeah,
of it, you should get your pharmacogenomics as well, which will then tell you how you, how you digest these drugs, or how, how they metabolize in your body. And so another thing that could be extremely helpful in clinical trials is that aspect of pharmacogenomics. If we could just tailor the drug a little bit to react differently in a certain person, you may push things through a trial way quicker.
That's amazing. Do you know anybody in those areas
I
that you already
do.
let
Yeah.
us know, please?
I will.
Oh, we're going
Yeah.
to reach out.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'll
A lot
let
of
you know and I'll
connections.
have them come on and talk to you because I think it's changing, right? The data
Yeah.
that's coming out, we're in a new digital age and there is a way for that data to pay back into the communities as well. And so those are the things we all need to discuss too. So
100%. Well, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Monica, Judy, Dan, Chris, we definitely need to cover these topics. There's so much to dig up into this, but thanks, Christine. Appreciate it. Thank you everybody for showing today. We're pretty much 2 minutes out. So we're gonna have, like Dan said, we'll be posting up the video very shortly. Please share this video. It was a huge one. I mean, I personally loved it a lot. So please go and share it. If you have any contacts that you feel would also be really great to come on, do not hesitate to reach out to us. But thank you so much, you
Yeah.
guys. You have a really great evening.
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you, Rainier, and thank you, Christine.